Welcome to Perspectives, a podcast where the clergy women of the First United Methodist Church of San Diego share their musings on scripture, theology, and what it has to do with us.
Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Perspectives. I'm Reverend Brittany, and I'm here with Reverend Hannah. We're continuing in our series, Hope for the Planet, and this week we're talking about how can we know? But before we dive into our scripture readings for today, we want to thank our Patreon subscribers, Christine, Natalie, and Dana, for your continued support. And if you are interested in supporting us any further, you can join us on patreon.com/FUMCSD. Our scriptures for today come from the book of Psalm, and then we head into the gospel reading from the Gospel of John. But we'll start with Psalm 104, verses 24 through 25. How many are your works, Lord? In your wisdom you made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. There is the sea, vast and spacious, teeming with creatures beyond number, living things, both large and small.
Well, we run into lots of praises to God's creation throughout the scripture, and Psalm 104 is one of them. But in your tiny selection, reading of 2 verses, it captured a lot about what the poet talked about in Psalm 104. So starting with God and the heavens and God and the earth and God and people. And now the poet is summarizing all of that, all God's work. And then the poet wraps the poem with this psalm with God's joy in all of them. And I know you have some wisdom about God's wisdom in all creation, so I won't go into that direction. But what I heard as you read the scripture was the word all. And the emphasis is on all. God made them all, and how the psalm is structured has a little rhythm, cadence to it. The focus shifts from heaven to earth earlier in the chapter, and to waters, to wild animals, and then to birds, water to birds, and earth again, and plants that feed the animals on earth, and then animals and people, and then to trees, and again to the birds again, and then to wild animals, and to heavenly bodies and all that, and then back to people. So I can sort of see this person's eyes looking at one thing, and that's connected to another, and all around the earth and back to, and how they're related.
Yeah.
And providing food to each other. So I see the cycle of all, not food chain, but
Yeah, the circle of life.
Yeah,
right?
interdependency among all those creatures on earth, and how important nature is to all of us. And it was just amazing to see and feel this person's perspectives on earth. What do you think?
I agree. I think what stuck out to me was in the wisdom you made all of them. But before I go there, what also stuck out to me in that wisdom is that there is sea. There is the sea, vast and spacious, teeming with creatures beyond number. And I think the most alive that I feel is when I'm either surrounded by trees or near the ocean. Because there's something about like the vastness of the ocean, the capacity of the ocean, the strength of the ocean that reminds me that I am just a little drop in the bucket, right? Yes. That like the waves are so much more powerful than I. Anything can happen on the ocean. It's a beautiful place, but it can be a dangerous,
There's a depth.
There's a depth to it, right? That I couldn't get to. And that, for me, is comforting it used to be scary as a kid, like what is down there? But now as an adult, it's more comforting to know that there's so much that I don't know. And I think that the ocean gives us permission to not know, and to kind of like trust. Because like we haven't even been able to get all the way down to like, the bottom of the ocean to know what's down there. We have absolutely no idea. So there's something about the vastness of the ocean, the strength of the ocean, the capacity of the ocean that frees us, I think, to not think that we have all the answers, that we need to know all the answers, but to know that there is something and that being God working well beyond anything that we could even think of. And that there is something to be said for the mystery of the unknown, to know that God is in that too.
Yeah. Did you just read Catherine Keller's?
I did not.
The Face of the Deep. It's a theological book. You just sounded like a summary of her book, which is really difficult to understand. Her writing is very complicated, like the ocean.
Yeah.
But the face of the deep, God, she's referring to God, but just like said, the mystery unknown to us that recognizing that we cannot know the depth of God, depth of the ocean, is the point.
Yeah. And it's also like, I feel, so there's something about like being in the ocean. I can't swim, right? I can't swim.
I'll save you.
Yeah, right? I can't swim. So there's something about knowing that like, I better not push my luck either with this. You know what I mean? Like I have to create certain boundaries, right? In order to remain safe, which is also kind of, I think, about life. I think that so often we think that like we're being good people when we don't have boundaries and stuff like that. But really and truly, I don't know, the ocean reminds me that like you have to have a boundary.
Yeah, you don't push against.
You don't push against it, Yeah.
Wow. And ocean actually brings us to a posture of humility.
Yeah.
We only can do this much. Catch a few fish and swim in one corner, but we're never going to explore the deep down of the ocean.
Exactly.
Nor are we created to survive
exactly
the
depth of it. And I think that for me, like a few weeks ago, I just felt like I needed to be grounded. And they always, the new TikTok counselors say that you should go out and like put your feet in grass. And I don't have any grass to necessarily put my feet in. So I thought, well, what can I do to ground myself? And what really does ground me is going out to the water. So I drove to La Jolla and I just sat at the water and I just listened to the waves. And it, again, reminds me that like I'm a drop in the bucket of creation. And that's how I know that God is alive and well and moving in the world, is because God is in nature, like when the hearing the waves was just like, oh, it's like almost like God whispering to me that it's going to be okay, So I think that we're giving ourselves the permission to question and wonder and to also marvel in the mystery that is in creation around us, particularly the ocean in this particular text, just reminds us that as much dominion as we have, we are still a part of this creation cycle that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, yes. And your visiting the ocean experience reminded me of reading the next verse to this one. And the poet's mention of Leviathan, which is told to be a mysterious, humongous creature in the sea that might eat up our lives. And if you think of God in the vastness of the ocean, and God is the one who actually created and embraced all those monstrous, humongous creatures on earth that we may not like.
Right.
So that actually, sorry for spinning too much, brought me to the understanding of God's grace being like the depth of ocean when we actually throw all those sewage into the ocean. The ocean is the one that actually purifies it again and back to life. So,
And Reverend Trudy always goes like scuba diving, right? Like that's a thing. I think, it just reminds you that you're not
outside.
You're not outside, and that as hard as life is, there are so many simple pleasures in knowing that you are a part of the universe, that you are a part of God's creation, and that your life matters. And paying attention to what God is doing, even in like the small acts of the wind.
Yeah.
So I think that for me is what it means that they were made in your wisdom, that God knows things well beyond us, that God created the ocean and the depths of the ocean, and God's wisdom is vast and wide, just like the ocean. And we will only be able to get a little glimpse of God's wisdom, right?
Yes.
In God's knowledge and God's knowing.
Yes. And even the mighty and mysterious ocean are subject to God the Creator.
God the Creator, right there in it. So that's our scripture from Psalm 104. And so moving on to the Gospel of John, we're looking at chapter 21, verses 4 through 6. Just after daybreak, Jesus stood on the beach, but the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, "Children, you have no fish, have you?" They answered him, "No." He said to them, "Cast the net to the right side of the boat, and you will find some." So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because there were so many fish.
That's an interesting story to begin with. This is post-resurrection story, and we as pastors and scholars and who learned the scripture knew that John and the original John ended in chapter 20, and this is a post-resurrection story. And then in that story, Jesus comes back to the disciples, and it has a setting for this miraculous catch of the day. And it's so interesting. You and I have different gifts, and I try not to touch upon all those gifted areas you have, and you do the same thing to me. But Jesus, he's not a fisherman. And he's meeting with his disciples out in their field, giving them an advice. And I don't know, there are so many things that I don't understand about this text. A little troubling text. But one thing that I know is that Jesus has some relationship with the nature and with the disciples. Children. Has Jesus called them children before?
I don't know.
It was new to me somehow. And I checked, because of that newness, strangeness, I checked into the commentary, and the word for children, the Greek word used was, I can't even pronounce.
Girl, I wouldn't either.
Ateknia, which is like little children type of thing. And like lads, a little, you kids.
A little patronizing.
And so the relationship, I don't know what that means, but with this experienced fisherman and Jesus, who's not a fisherman, calling them children in their field, I went crazy with this text, and I don't know what to make of it. Do you have any clue?
Well, for me, I think the thing that stood out to me is that this is the post-resurrection, and as you said, John, the original John stopped at John 20, right? So this is an added story. But I think it's interesting that they didn't know, the disciples did not know it was Jesus, even, that's common. Jesus comes back and they don't know that it's Jesus. But for me, it's like, I think that there have been so many times in my life where I'm supposed to know how to do a thing and it doesn't work the way I thought that it does or it should, or I think, I should all over the place. I should have done this. I should have done that. I should know this.
We have all those things.
Right? And in those moments, I don't think I recognize God, right? I think that because I'm skilled in that area or because I've trained or read or been taught that I should know. And in so many ways, I forget that like God is still doing God's thing, and like, while yes, I am skilled, there is still much knowledge beyond me. And also not even just knowledge, but that just because I'm skilled doesn't mean that I can't make room for the miraculous to happen.
Yes. Yes.
That like sometimes like when we talk about worship and we're like so focused on excellence, I always think that, we have to be focused on excellence, right? But we also have to make space for like the things that will happen and believe that God is in that too, And so for me in my own personal life, I have often been in situations where I am like, I know this cognitively, but I don't feel this emotionally, and I don't think I've necessarily opened my heart for the space to see God guiding me and also like looking to God for direction or help.
Yes, you're my guiding star today. Bring me back to the point where we are heading. Well, in the areas that we think we are gifted, we are trained, that's where we have either less room for humility or less tolerance for mistakes.
Right.
But our life, and that's what these fishermen were doing in their own field. They didn't recognize Jesus. They didn't know how to catch fish. But I think you just brought me back to a point that we also need to leave room for the Spirit to move in us, among us, and around us, and that, you just preached to me.
I mean, I just think it's often like, Jesus is standing right there, and I'm always like, how do they not know it's Jesus? Like, they spend all this time with Jesus, and they don't know it's Jesus, and it's like, Brittany, you've been in the church since you were yay high to a grasshopper, and you miss him often. So, like, maybe let's slow down with the condemnation of somebody else and really think about, like, what does this mean? Yes. They didn't recognize Jesus because they were stressed. They were in distress, How often do I do the same thing?
Yes.
So, yeah.
I think we need to like zoom out a little bit and less occupied with the things that we do every day.
Right.
To know God's wisdom and out in the nature, out in all creation. And so,
I think that we know that God is God because we know that we are not.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And the way that you do that is by humbling yourself to be in nature because it's big, it's vast, it's wide, it holds so much more depth than any of us could compare, that any of us on our own could hold and handle. So that's how I think we know.
Yes. That's probably why I relax the most out in the nature and camping, and when I don't have any power over the electricity and other things that I enjoy. So,
yeah.
Do you want to go camping with me?
I would go camping with you. Oh. I would like not necessarily totally roughing it, but right. An air mattress and a couple blankets I can handle.
Okay. You're okay with rice and seaweed wrap?
Yeah, of course.
Let's go camping.
Let's do it.
All right. Do you have any other wisdom you want to offer to our audience?
No.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah. Reverend Hannah, can we add a question?
Yes.
But I'll let you go.
Oh, okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So the 3 questions that we came up with were this, and she will add one more for you to think about. What does the wisdom of God look like? And how have you experienced the wisdom of God in nature? And how do you know when you encounter the divine, especially when you're struggling? And here you go.
What does the wisdom of God sound like in your heart?
Oh, deep.
Yeah.
The face of the deep.
The face of the deep.
That's Catherine Keller.
It's also the Bible.
Yes.
It's also Genesis.
Yes.
But
All right. That's about it.
That's
so
it.
Thank you so much for listening to us, watching us, and we want to hear your perspectives when you get a chance, and look forward to seeing you again the following week.
bye.
This is a production of First United Methodist Church of San Diego. To learn more about our events and ministries and to access additional learning resources, visit fumcsd.org.